What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors steps into what he expects to be a routine morning show interview, only to find himself facing a host who seems determined to stir up controversy at any cost? The tension in the Good Morning America studio was palpable, and what followed left everyone in stunned silence. Before we dive into the details of this explosive encounter, make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below telling me what you think really went down. Tom Hardy arrived at the Good Morning America studio that morning, prepared for the usual promotional interview. His latest film had Oscar buzz, and his publicist assured him that it would be a straightforward discussion about the film's themes and his craft. But what Hardy didn't expect was an interrogation disguised as an interview. Michael Strahan sat across from him, his familiar television smile plastered on his face. But there was something in his eyes, a glint that suggested this wasn't going to be the pleasant chat Hardy had prepared for. "Thanks for joining us this morning," Strahan announced to the cameras, his voice carrying the usual television enthusiasm. "Thanks for having me," Hardy replied, settling into his chair with his signature quiet intensity. Dressed simply in a dark jacket over a plain shirt, he appeared calm but alert. "So, let's dive in," Strahan began, leaning forward slightly. "Your new film deals with some heavy themes: addiction, family trauma. I have to ask, how much of this comes from personal experience?" Hardy raised an eyebrow slightly. It wasn't an unusual question for an actor, but there was something in Strahan's tone, something probing, crossing the line from professional curiosity to personal invasion. "Well, as an actor, you draw from various sources, life experiences, research, observations," Hardy replied carefully. "It's about creating something authentic for the character." But Strahan wasn't backing down. "Come on, Tom," he pressed, his smile never wavering. "We've all heard the stories about your past, struggles with substances. Surely this role hit close to home." The shift in the room was immediate. Hardy's jaw tightened imperceptibly, his eyes sharp as steel. "I think you're confusing personal growth with exploitation, Michael," Hardy responded, his voice measured but firm. "My past is something I've been open about when it serves a purpose, not when it serves ratings." Strahan chuckled, but it sounded forced. "Hey, I'm just asking the questions our viewers want to know. You're a public figure. People are curious about what makes Tom Hardy tick." "Are they?" Hardy countered, his voice still calm but now tinged with a subtle edge. "Or is this more about what makes Michael Strahan's interview memorable?" The tension thickened, evident in every shift of Hardy's body language. His hands, once casually resting on the chair's arms, were now still and purposeful. This was no longer the relaxed promotional chat either man had expected. "Look," Strahan continued, seemingly oblivious to the building tension, "you've made a career playing tough guys, anti-heroes, characters on the edge. I'm just wondering, how much of that is acting, and how much is the real Tom Hardy?" Hardy was silent for a moment. In that silence, the entire studio seemed to hold its breath. When he spoke again, his voice was calm, yet unwavering. "The real Tom Hardy," he said slowly, "is someone who respects the craft enough to prepare thoroughly, who takes his work seriously, and who expects the same professionalism from everyone he works with, interviewers included." Strahan's smile faltered for just a moment. "I think we're seeing that professionalism right now, aren't we? This is what good television looks like. Real conversation between real people." "Real conversation?" Hardy repeated, almost as if savoring the words. "Is that what you call this? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels more like you're trying to create a moment that doesn't exist." The cameras continued to roll, capturing every flicker of expression, every shift in posture. The producers, likely thrilled by the unscripted drama unfolding before them, were watching closely. But Hardy wasn't playing along with their game. "I think our viewers appreciate honesty," Strahan said, his tone now more defensive. They want to see the person behind the performances. Then maybe you should try asking about the performances, Hardy shot back, his voice still controlled, but with a hint of frustration creeping in. About the months of preparation, the research, the collaboration with directors and fellow actors. Instead of fishing for personal drama that has nothing to do with the work. Strahan leaned back slightly, perhaps finally realizing he had pushed too far. But instead of backing down, Strahan doubled down. Well, when you put yourself out there as an actor, especially in roles dealing with such intense subject matter, don't you think it's fair for people to wonder about the connection? Hardy's response was immediate and sharp. What I think is fair is for journalists to do their homework, to ask questions that contribute to the audience's understanding of the craft, not their craving for gossip. What I think is fair is for morning television to elevate the conversation instead of dragging it down into the gutter. The words hung in the air like a challenge, and for the first time, Strahan's polished television demeanor began to crack. His practiced smile faltered, and in its place emerged something far more defensive. His jaw tightened, and his eyes flashed with what looked like wounded pride. "Look, Tom," Strahan said, his voice losing some of its usual warmth. "I've been doing this for years. I know how to conduct an interview. Maybe the problem isn't with my questions. Maybe it's with someone who can't handle a little scrutiny." Hardy's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. He leaned back slightly, his hands folding together with deliberate calm. "Scrutiny," he repeated, his voice laced with quiet disdain. "Is that what you call this fishing expedition?" "I call it journalism," Strahan shot back, his voice rising just enough to show he was starting to lose his composure. "Real questions for real people, not some sanitized publicity nonsense where we pretend celebrities are above normal human curiosity." "Normal human curiosity?" Hardy said slowly, as though considering the phrase. "Tell me, Michael, when you were playing football, did interviewers spend their time asking about your personal demons? Or did they focus on your performance, your preparation, your contribution to the team?" The comparison clearly stung. Strahan's face darkened, and his carefully controlled posture stiffened. "That's completely different. Football is about statistics, about measurable performance, and acting isn't." Hardy's voice remained unnervingly calm, which only seemed to agitate Strahan more. "Every choice an actor makes is measurable. Every moment on screen is a result of specific preparation and technique. But you're not interested in any of that, are you?" Strahan leaned forward, his television smile completely gone. "What I'm interested in is giving our audience something real, something honest. Not some actor hiding behind intellectual superiority and fancy words." "Intellectual superiority?" Hardy repeated, and for the first time, a hint of a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. But it wasn't a pleasant one. "That's an interesting way to describe basic professionalism and respect for one's craft." "Don't patronize me," Strahan snapped, his voice sharp enough to make several crew members visibly flinch. "I've earned my place at this desk. I've worked for everything I have." "Have you?" Hardy asked quietly, and those two words carried more weight than a shouted accusation. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're trying to build your reputation by tearing down someone else's." The accusation hit its mark. Strahan's face flushed, and his hands gripped the edge of the desk. "You think you can come in here and lecture me about my job? You think because you've done a few movies, you understand television?" "I understand respect," Hardy replied, his voice never rising above a conversational tone, which only made his words all the more cutting. "I understand preparation. I understand the difference between asking questions that serve a purpose and asking questions that serve your ego." "My ego?" Strahan's voice cracked slightly, betraying the depth of his discomfort. "You're the one who can't handle a simple interview without turning it into some kind of intellectual debate. Hardy tilted his head slightly, studying Strahan with the kind of intensity he brought to his most complex characters. Simple interview? Is that what you call this ambush? Because I came here to discuss a film. My craft. The work that dozens of people pour their hearts into. Instead, I find myself dealing with someone who seems more interested in creating controversy than creating understanding. Controversy sells, Strahan said, and immediately the words sounded like a regretful admission. I mean, engaging television requires real emotion, real conflict. There it is, Hardy said softly, a note of disappointment in his voice. Controversy sells. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Not journalism, not serving your audience, but manufacturing drama for ratings. Strahan tried to recover, his media training kicking in automatically. That's not what I meant. What I meant was that our viewers connect with authentic moments, with real human interaction. Real human interaction, Hardy mused, raising an eyebrow. Like attacking someone's personal history to generate a reaction? Like trying to provoke an argument where none existed? That's your definition of authentic? The questions cut with surgical precision, each one designed to expose the hollowness of Strahan's justifications. And it was working. Strahan was visibly struggling to maintain his composure, his carefully constructed television persona crumbling under Hardy's relentless, quiet assault. I don't have to justify my methods to you, Strahan snapped, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. This is my show. This is my house. And if you don't like how things work here, maybe you shouldn't have agreed to come on. Hardy's eyebrows rose slightly. Your house? He repeated. How illuminating. Because I thought this was supposed to be about serving the viewers, about informing and entertaining them. But apparently, it's really about serving you. Everything isn't about you, Tom, Strahan shot back, his voice now openly hostile. Some of us work in the real world, where we have to deliver results, where we can't just disappear into character and pretend the real world doesn't exist. The real world, Hardy said, now with genuine steel in his voice. The real world is where people create things of value, where they contribute something meaningful to the culture. What exactly are you contributing here, Michael, besides manufacturing? Conflict for entertainment? Strahan's face was now openly flushed with anger and embarrassment. He had completely lost control of the interview. And worse, he was losing it on live television in front of millions of viewers. His next words came out in a rush, fueled by frustration and wounded pride. You know what? Strahan exploded, his voice echoing through the studio. I'm tired of actors like you thinking you're better than everyone else, thinking you're some kind of artist when really you're just playing dress-up for a living. At least I accomplished something real, something that matters in people's daily lives. The outburst was so unexpected, so raw, that for a moment the entire studio fell silent. Camera operators exchanged uneasy glances. Producers frantically whispered into their headsets, and the few audience members present sat in stunned silence. This wasn't morning television anymore. This was a public meltdown happening in real time. Hardy, however, remained completely still. If anything, Strahan's explosion seemed to have the opposite effect on him. A calming influence that only made his response all the more devastating. Playing dress-up? Hardy repeated quietly, his voice carrying easily through the now silent studio. That's an interesting perspective from someone whose job consists of reading from a teleprompter and asking questions written by other people. Odit, Strahan's eyes widened, realizing too late that his emotional outburst had handed Hardy all the ammunition he needed. That's not, Strahan began, but Hardy cut him off. I don't just read, Strahan continued, his voice rising defensively. I conduct real interviews with real impact." "Real impact?" Hardy nodded thoughtfully. "Like this morning? Is this the kind of real impact you're talking about? Because I have to say, Michael, if this is your idea of conducting an eat-or-eat interview with real impact, I think you might want to reconsider your definition of both real and impact." The words were delivered with such calm precision that they felt like physical blows. Strahan was now visibly sweating, his perfectly styled hair beginning to show the strain of his emotional state. "You think you're so clever?" Strahan said, his voice shaking slightly, clearly rattled by Hardy's composure. "Sitting there with your calm little responses, acting like you're above all this. But you're not fooling anyone. You're just another actor who thinks the world owes him something." Hardy's expression didn't change, but when he spoke, there was a note of genuine curiosity in his voice. "The world owes me something? That's fascinating, because I wasn't aware I had made any demands. I came here to discuss a film, to talk about the work of talented people who spent months creating something they hoped would move audiences. What exactly do you think I believe the world owes me?" Strahan opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again, realizing he had painted himself into a corner. His face was now openly red with embarrassment and anger. "I think," Hardy continued, his voice still maddeningly calm, "that you're confusing me with yourself. Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you're the one who believes the world owes you something. The world owes you drama, controversy, moments that will generate headlines and social media buzz. The world owes you content for your show, regardless of whether that content has any value or serves any purpose beyond entertainment." "That's not true," Strahan protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "I provide a service. I inform people. I give them news and entertainment." "Do you?" Hardy asked, tilting his head slightly. "Because what service exactly? Have you provided this morning? What have you informed your viewers about? What news have you delivered? What entertainment have you offered beyond the spectacle of watching you lose control of your own show?" The questions hung in the air, like accusations, and Strahan seemed to physically shrink under their weight. He looked around desperately, as if hoping someone would throw him a lifeline. But the crew members were all studiously avoiding eye contact. "You came on my show," Strahan said weakly, grasping for some kind of authority. "You agreed to be here." "I did," Hardy agreed. "I came here in good faith, expecting to have a professional conversation about work that I'm proud of, work that represents the efforts of hundreds of talented people. Instead, I find myself in the middle of what can only be described as a character assassination attempt by someone who seems to have confused journalism with tabloid sensationalism." Strahan's mouth opened and closed several times, like a fish gasping for air. The complete reversal of power in the interview was undeniable, and it was all happening on live television. "But here's what's really interesting, Michael," Hardy continued, his voice taking on an almost conversational tone that somehow made his words even more cutting. "In your desperation to create a moment, to manufacture controversy, you've actually revealed something much more compelling than anything you could have dug up about my personal life." Strahan, though looking like he didn't want to hear the answer, asked, "What's that supposed to mean?" "You've revealed yourself," Hardy said simply. "You've shown your viewers exactly what kind of journalist you are, exactly what your priorities are, exactly how much respect you have for your guests and your audience. And I think that's far more interesting than anything you could have uncovered about my past." The studio was dead silent, the only sound being the low hum of the cameras still rolling, capturing every moment of Strahan's humiliation. "You've shown them that you're willing to ambush a guest who came here in good faith," Hardy continued, his voice gathering momentum. You've shown them that you're more interested in creating drama than delivering information. You've shown them that when challenged on your methods, you resort to personal attacks and emotional outbursts instead of defending your journalism with facts and professionalism. Strahan looked like he wanted to sink into his chair. His earlier bravado was completely gone, replaced by the expression of someone who had just realized the terrible mistake they had made in front of millions. Most importantly, Hardy said, leaning forward slightly, you've shown them that when someone refuses to play your game, when someone won't be bullied into providing the drama you're looking for, you don't have a backup plan. You don't actually know how to conduct a real interview. The words landed with devastating precision, as though Hardy's calm demeanor and razor-sharp critique cut through Strahan's entire persona. Strahan seemed deflated, his entire self-assurance crumbling before him. I think, Hardy said, sitting back and checking his watch with deliberate casualness, that our time here is probably better served if I leave now. Unless, of course, you'd like to try asking me about the film I came here to discuss, though I suspect that ship may have sailed. Hardy stood slowly, his movements deliberate and controlled. He began to remove his microphone. The finality of his actions seemed to break the stillness in the room, a clear signal that the interview was over. Tom, wait, Strahan said desperately, his voice cracking. We can start over. We can talk about the film. Hardy paused in removing his microphone and looked directly at Strahan for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but carried clearly through the studio. Michael, I think you've already told your audience everything they need to know about both of us, and I don't think there's anything left to say. With that, he finished removing his microphone, placed it carefully on the chair, and walked off the set with the same quiet dignity he had maintained throughout the entire confrontation. Behind him, Strahan sat in stunned silence. The cameras still rolled, capturing every moment of his complete defeat. What was supposed to be a routine promotional appearance had turned into something entirely different. A masterclass in how true professionalism responds to manufactured drama, and how integrity can triumph over sensationalism even in the most hostile environment. What did you think of this explosive confrontation? Did Tom Hardy handle it the right way, or should he have taken a different approach? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more behind-the-scenes drama from Hollywood's biggest stars.